Hey everybody, it's good to be back. So I'm trying to move the paradigm in the woodworking epoxy world away from just river tables. So I came up with this idea of sky pours. Now I think epoxy resin naturally lends itself to this beautiful deep sky background. I've also been thinking a lot about making more functional art pieces.
Like this wine rack, entryway shelf, and Lazy Susan.
In these coat racks, I'm coupling those two ideas together in a traditional mountain scene using reclaimed wood. I think they came out super cool. So without any further ado, let's get into it.
The first thing I do is cut the backing. Now I made these 24 by 14, but of course you can make them any size you want.
Now that I have my backing cut, it's time to build the mountains. I use these old cedar fence pieces that have this really nice patina, and then on the other side is nice and gray. So what I usually do is I'll take the patina and use those pieces in the middle, and then the gray sort of on the sides and maybe a little corner here in the back to represent mountains in the depth, in the distance. I'll take one of the long pieces and decide exactly where I want my mountain to be. And then I'll bring it over to the table saw, cut it to length, and usually it ends up where I'll have like another little piece, so that works out perfectly for the bottom of the mountain. And then on that mountain, these two pieces match. And then I get another one that is slightly different and put it next to it at a different angle, so it kind of adds a little intrigue and depth also.
Once the glue dried overnight, I flipped it over, took it over to the bandsaw, and cut the overhanging mountains on each piece, sanded that side flat, and then I would have a perfectly flat side to square everything off on the table saw. To square the bottom of the mountains, I lower the blade to the height of the backing, get everything squared up, then raise the blade again, and then my cut is right on the edge of the backing.
Now we need to frame everything, and the reason we do that now is so when we pour the epoxy sky, then the epoxy doesn't leak out everywhere. So I have these scrap pieces of maple laying around the shop. They're a little tall, so what I've done is cut them down to 1 3/8 inches, and that's just about the right height to make the wood, the maple frame, just a little bit proud of the mountains.
So I gave them a quick sand and then took them over to the staining station and used some natural stain just to bring out their natural color. I realized that before I put the frame on, I wanted to paint the background. This just kind of gives a little assurance that you can't see any imperfections in the plywood through the resin. I also added a little wood filler on the edge of all the mountains so no resin would seep through any cracks. I've gotten a few comments that when I put a frame on, I don't miter the corners, but I don't need to. These are rustic pieces. They're designed not to be super posh, you know, that is part of the beauty of them. So the way I do it really simply. I take my frame piece and I line it up with the edge here, and I run a bead of glue all the way across,
Put it on, throw a couple nails in it, and then I flip it over like this. This piece is sitting like that, right? So I take my next piece and just line it up like that. And then I rotate it again. And then I take my top piece and then I line that one up. And then continue all the way around. Now what happens is I end up with these little nubs, so I just cut those off on the bandsaw and give them a little sand, and we're good to go. We've got a really cool rustic frame. Now it's time to pour the epoxy. I have everything laid out in front of me for when I need it. I have my levels and shims to level. I have the epoxy, 2-part epoxy, 50-50. I have cups to mix the epoxy. I have all my colors. I have torches for bubbles, gloves, and of course a mask.
The first thing I do before pouring the epoxy is level both pieces. Sometimes this takes a while and sometimes it's really quick. Now I'm ready to mix the resin, so I get my 50-50 mix of resin and hardener. Mix them together. Sprinkle on the colored mica and stir it in. Notice how I have 3 different colored blues here. That's so I get a little bit depth of color when I pour it on. Some people pour and leave it to its own devices. I like to smooth it out and kind of create the designs that I want. You'll see what I mean here in a minute, and especially when I do the clouds, they came out really cool. I let the epoxy cure and harden overnight. And now it's time to paint the mountains. So I tape off everything that I don't want to get paint on and just create a beautiful natural looking snowscape. So I got to thinking, and I said to myself, people are going to be hanging their coats on this, and we're going to need to protect the coats from the wood and the wood from the coats. So what I decided to do was just put a little layer of epoxy, clear epoxy, on the wood.
We're almost finished, just 2 more things to do. The first is to put these double coat hook hangers on. I found these on Amazon. I was a little concerned that they'd be kind of cheap, but they're not at all. They're metal, they're solid, they're powder coated. I'll put a link in the description to these guys if you're interested. The second thing that we have left to do is to put these keyhole hangers on the back. I'm using keyhole hangers because they're a little more solid, as the coat hangers will be kind of jostled around a lot as coats go on and off of them. So we want something that's a lot more solid than just like a wire or something like that, right? So yeah, all right, let's finish these guys off.
So the first thing I do is find the center point, draw a line, make sure both hangers are the same distance from the top of the piece, and the exact same distance from that center line. And then we can drill holes and screw them in. Just make sure you tape your drill bit so you don't drill through the backing. For the hooks, I actually clamped down a 24-inch straight edge so I could get my distance exactly between where the hooks were going to be. And then from there, it was really easy to mark and drill the holes. I put a dab of glue into the holes just to add a little strength. Set the hooks in place and screwed them in. And that's the Skyport Corex. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out and helps other people find these videos too.